Yeah, just have to sit. I like that. Yeah, that's
Just sit there and look
very,
good.
Yeah, walking in is actually hard. Hi, I'm Patrick Mulholland, partner at QIC Infrastructure,
And I'm Richard Fink, interim CEO at Bluecurrent.
and this is From All Angles. Are you ready, Richard?
Yep, let's go.
A key question from investors: how is it a relative newcomer like smart meters are so critical in the energy transition in Australia and New Zealand, and where do they sit in the value chain?
Thanks, Patrick. That is an interesting question. I think on the surface, the smart meter looks quite insignificant, but I think what you'll find is what I'd say they're the quiet achievers of the energy transition. There's a lot happening at the moment in the markets. The increased generation from renewables, investment in solar and wind, particularly in Australia, the adoption of batteries and storage, the rise of power-hungry EVs. All of these sorts of things lead to making our grid or our energy network very complicated. So matching the supply of energy to the demand for energy has become more critical than ever before. So what we see is the role of smart meters is they're part of the grid, they're part of the infrastructure. They provide the visibility of what's actually happening at the grid edge being your house or your place of business. So what I would say is more than ever, a smart meter has become a critical asset that helps us in our decarbonisation path, making decarbonisation more affordable and achievable.
Scale's quite interesting when you look at Bluecurrent, which is our investment alongside Vector. More than 2.7 million meters, more than 2 billion intervals of data processed every day. Significant scale already in building.
And what investors might be surprised about is the pace of change and the pace of scale that exists today. So in New Zealand, we're already above 90% smart meter adoption. In Australia, we're actually above 50% across the national energy market, which is largely the east coast of Australia and South Australia. But the regulator, the Australian Energy Markets Commission, has just mandated that the national electricity grid, if you like, goes to full rollout by 2030. So we have 5 years to go from about 50% to close to 100%. So, we will continue to build scale and momentum in this space. The other thing to note is from an investment perspective, it's not just electricity. We know that our gas and our water networks are also looking to digitise. So we have another sort of 10 million odd homes that are actually looking to upgrade their water meters from legacy or dumb meters to smart meters. So it creates a strategic platform for future growth for Bluecurrent.
So the role that the meters play, it's not just about efficiency and making the grid run better, it's also about making the grid smarter. And so we're not just building scale for scale's sake. For investors, this is a new infrastructure asset class. It's got contracted cash flows, which are inflation linked. It has long lead assets. It also has a regulated growth and rollout. So for infrastructure investors, this is about revenue resilience and digital upside.
Yeah, look, a really good example of recent times. We're working with one of the network operators in the South Island of New Zealand. Now, they were quite concerned about rooftop solar coming into their networks, and that's something we see play out in Australia. We're able to give them a lot of data on what that solar actually looked like, give them confidence it wasn't actually going to put their networks under stress. And the outcome of that is they've actually doubled the amount of solar they're taking from residential solar users into the network. So only driving better use of renewables at the right times of day. So again, to your point, we're providing the data to make the network smarter, not bigger.
But it's not all smooth sailing, is it, Richard, in terms of this growth and investment?
No, look, the rollout is obviously costly and complex and does take some time. We've also got to make sure that we're building consumer trust into the system. So this is something new for a lot of consumers. The good news is, though, with access to capital, planned, scheduled rollouts, consumer awareness campaigns, and currently a very certain regulatory framework, this is very achievable for the Australian market in the next 5 years.
And this is where active private capital can play a real role here, partnering with management teams, with regulators, and also industry players alike to invest in the growth and support it, and also setting standards in terms of data integrity and operability as well. So this is not just about a more efficient grid, as we talked about before, and a better outcome for investors, but also customers alike. And we're not the first to have done this. There's lessons learned globally, aren't there, Richard, about how we can do this better?
Well, I think that the good news is in New Zealand, as I said, we're above 90% in smart meter adoption. So we're taking all those lessons and applying them to our Australian accelerated rollout. Fundamentally engaging with the end customers is important, and then partnering across the ecosystem with the networks and the retailers. We also look to the US and Europe for future innovation We find that Europe particularly is advanced in its use of data and its use of artificial intelligence and machine learning on top of the data. So they're building very resilient and very smart grids. So as you said before, they're not making the networks bigger, they're actually making them smarter with a lot more visibility of what's going on. So we're taking some of that learning back into both Australia and New Zealand to actually provide better value, if you like, to the end consumers and also our retail customers.
So key takeaways from an investor perspective today, smart meters aren't really just about measuring electricity, are they? They're about choice, efficiency, resilience. It's a rare combination from an investor perspective to have essential infrastructure with a digital edge.
Yeah, look, absolutely. What I like to say is they may be small, but they're making a big and immediate difference to our energy transition. And at Bluecurrent, we're proud to be working with partners like QIC, the QIC investors, to lead the charge across Australia and New Zealand.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Pat. It's good.